G'day there. You're watching the Aussie BIM Guru, and today we're continuing our series on pyRevit. In this case, having a look at how you can deploy and manage Dynamo scripts through a toolbar using pyRevit. Now, there are a lot of tools out there that do this, some paid, some free. pyRevit, of course, being one that is free and open source. So I'm definitely very enthusiastic about this as an option for deploying Dynamo scripts to your company beyond Dynamo Player and Dynamo itself. Now, I will be using some custom packages in the scripts I show you today, specifically crumple and data shapes. So it is worth noting that you will still need those custom packages available on any computer that wishes to run these scripts through a toolbar. That limitation is always there as long as you're using Dynamo and custom packages. Having said that, I found pyRevit to be a quick and effective way of deploying Dynamo scripts as prototypes before you upgrade them into full-blown pyRevit Python scripts. And I think it's a great step into the world of pyRevit as well. So I do encourage you to try it out, and I hope you find this video helpful. Anyway, let's get started. So if you haven't seen my previous video on the channel, I created a script that could be run through Dynamo to apply 4 floor finishes to rooms based on their values. I'm going to look at how you might consider redesigning such a script first to work better with a tool like pyRevit. Because remember, we're going to be running Dynamo through the toolbar, so we're not going to get the chance to use Dynamo Player. So I do recommend you do install the data shapes package, which allows you to create user interfaces. Let's have a look at the original script and how it worked, and also an alternative approach to it that I've set up instead, just for example. So in this case, I'm going to open up my original floor finishes with no user interface. And this one did rely on Dynamo Player for one input. But originally I was taking all the rooms in my model, checking their floor finish parameter, and comparing this to the description of all the floor types in the model, finding the match and setting the floor type. Now in this case, I'm going to use a user interface to allow me to select the rooms that I wish to apply the finish towards, and also an option as to whether I want to offset or make the finishes flush to the level of that room. So originally I did have one input for Dynamo Player, which allowed me to override whether I have flush finishes or erase the finishes by their thickness. I've taken a little bit of a different approach when I look at data shapes instead. So let's have a look at that. So my thoughts here are that because I'm running through pyRevit, I can instead use data shapes to select the rooms that I wish to apply a finish to manually. And then I can also nominate the floor type using a drop-down, and I can also nominate whether they're raised or flush using a radio button. So you can see here I've set up 3 inputs. I've set up a drop-down for my floor types. I've set up a select model element starter just to select rooms, and I've also set up a radio button with options of raised or flush. I collect these in a multiple user input form ++ and take the outputs. And you can see my script is now much simpler. All I'm doing is getting the levels of my room to set the floors that I create. Also, I'm taking the room finish boundaries for the curve lists for this custom node, and I'm also taking the default thickness and 0, and using the if then else node to determine the outcome of whether I wish to raise, in this case, this particular finish. And by the end, you can see that I've really simplified the script itself. It's more how I collect the inputs that is more important. I've got some other scripts I'm going to set up into the pyRevit toolbar as well, such as a bulk revisioning tool, which in this case will use data shapes as well. In this case, firstly, to pick the revision that we wish to add or remove, we're going to get a list of all the sheets with their name and number and the sheets themselves, and also a radio button for whether we wish to add or remove the revisions from the sheets. This is a fairly commonly covered workflow on my channel and is one of my favorite workflows to teach people about data shapes, pyRevit, or Dynamo. As well as this, we're now just using the add and remove revision node and showing a user interface messenger node to show what the outcome of the script was. So we're putting a few little user interface components in there so that we actually do sort of feel like we're running a tool when we run the script. Finally, I've got one tool which uses 2 user interfaces instead of 1, which I call the super selector. And in this case, in the first stage, I'm allowing the user to pick any number of categories from data shapes. From here, I'm using this as a category filter, and then I'm giving the user the chance to select objects in the view only of those categories. So it's a pre-filtered selection. And from here, I can then return those objects and select them in Revit. So let's actually put these into a toolbar for pyRevit. So what I'm going to do is go to the toolbar I made previously, my tool, and I'm going to go into one of the panels. I'll just go in this case to the tab and then to the testing panel, which I'm now going to rename to Dynamo. And I'm also just going to modify the bundle to call this links and Dynamo. Now you can have as many tools as you want. You can structure them in the same way as any other tool in pyRevit. Definitely check out my previous video in this series on pyRevit to show where I show you how you can build pull downs, stacks, and all other types of tools. But I'm going to go to dynamo.panel. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to I don't know if I'll use a stack. I think I'll just use push buttons. So what I'm going to do is just take one of these tools, and I'm also just going to go to my stack and just move the bundle file just one level higher. And let's give these tools some folder names. So I'll call this one bulk rev. And I'm just going to tune one of these folders first so that we don't have to modify this to suit very much. So we're no longer going to have a Python script in this push button. I'm going to delete this script. I'm just going to take the icon for bulk revisioning, which I'll probably use. That icon didn't download too well. We'll try it anyway. Should just be like a plus sign. And I'm just going to modify the bundle in this case to give it a name. And I'll call this bulk rev, and I'll just say runs a Dynamo script, so you don't have to watch me type in something separate each time, because that wouldn't be very exciting. And the last thing I need to do is actually take my Dynamo script, copy it in here as a dyn file, and in this case you're going to want to rename this to script.dyn. Now in my experience you can also give this a prefix, as long as it ends with script.dyn in my experience. So we'll try that. And what I'm going to do now is just copy this folder twice and just create two separate push buttons. So I'll call this select.pushButton. And again, we're going to be taking our super selector script. I'll call this select_script.dyn. Take my icon, rename it, and rename the tool as well. Super select. And finally, we'll take our last tool, which is the floor finishes tool that we made. So I'll do floor finish push button. And while I'm here, I'm just going to update the YAML file to put these in order. So we'll have bulk rev first. I'll do floor finish second, and select third. Now let's update our floor finish tool. And we're going to take the one with the user interface because we actually need a user interface for this to work. I'll do floor finish underscore script.dyn. I'll take my icon. And you can see it's a fairly straightforward process. You just need that icon file. You need a bundle to tell it what its name is. I'll call it finisher. And then we just need the script itself. So now that these are here, what I should be able to do is go back to pyRevit, and I should be able to resave or reload my toolbar. So I'm going to go to Save Settings and Reload, and this should refresh all the buttons in my Tools toolbar. And we should now have some buttons that point to Dynamo scripts specifically. So we can see we now have 3 push buttons in the Dynamo tab. So let's just try running one of them first. Let's try running the bulk revisioning tool. So what it's going to do is open Dynamo in the background, so it's a little bit slow. It's going to be a little bit slower than running Dynamo typically, but about the same speed as running Dynamo Player for the first time. But you can see now that it does very capably bring up a data shapes user interface. Obviously I need to have data shapes installed as well as any other custom packages. But from there, I'm able to run my tool just like I would normally. I can run my 2-stage user interface, my super selector. Let's say I only want to be able to select doors. Now I have the option to select just doors, finish, and next, and I now have just my doors selected. Finally, let's have a look at the script that we updated from my previous video, the floor finishes tool. So I can see now I have my user interface, firstly with my floor type. Let's say we're going to do carpet, And I'm going to select rooms, and I'll just, in this case, nominate these 4 rooms plus this corridor. So you can see Data Shapes has a really great category filter, which makes things really easy to pick. And I'll say in this case that I want to have a raised finish. I'll run, and we can see we now have those floor finishes applied to our model with their nominal offset based on their thickness. So very quickly, we've been able to assemble a bunch of Dynamo scripts into a toolbar. Now we could of course make these into a stack or a pull down as well to save a bit of space on our ribbon. So let's just very quickly turn this into a pull down. So it's very easy to do. I'm just going to go to my Dynamo panel, and in my Dynamo panel, I'm just going to make a pull down. So I'll just say in this case that we want to have dynamo.pulldown. And in that pull down, we're going to be putting those 3 push buttons. We're going to now move this, which is our YAML file, our bundle, which we can keep the same. It's just going to order the pull down. And finally, we just need an icon. I'm not sure if there is a pyRevit icon, a Dynamo icon on icons 8, but let's double check anyway and see if we get lucky. You never know. It would be pretty cool to have a little Dynamo icon. Unfortunately not. Well, it doesn't look like it. But what we can do is just get like a D or something like that maybe. I don't know if there's a letter D. I'll just use this one here, assuming there's a suitable size. There is. Great. Just so that our pull down actually has an icon. So I'll just rename this to icon before moving it. Navigate to my pull down. And now instead, when I reload, they should be condensed into a pull down. And you can do pull downs and stacks. You can do stacked pull downs. You can save a lot of space. You could get hundreds of Dynamo scripts into a single toolbar if you wanted to. Remembering that you do need to configure them to work through pyRevit. That's probably the main limitation. But there we go. We can see now those 3 tools are available in a pull down instead. So we can see it's very easy and very simple. In my opinion, it's probably the easiest tool out there for deploying and integrating scripts into your toolbar, especially if you can run from a server-based environment. And the best thing of all, of course, is it's free. So I hope you find that useful, and in future videos, we'll have a look at how we can build some Python tools in pyRevit as well. So there you have it, quite easy and quite effective when it comes to deploying Dynamo scripts to your users via a server-based environment. I found this is a really good half-in, half-out approach when you're looking to get started with pyRevit, but maybe you're not quite experienced enough with Python yet to start building your own tools in Python itself. So this might be a great place to start if you're just beginning to explore these tools, but you do wish to show your users, I guess, where you're taking them in the future. It's also a good place to deploy prototype tools when they're not quite ready for Python scripts, or you're just working on the Python version in the meantime. Dynamo is still a very quick environment to rapidly generate tools that do fairly simple things before you scale them into more complex beasts. In future videos, we'll have a look at actually building Python scripts for Python specifically. So if you are following along week by week, I do recommend that you do some reading up on Python and the Revit API. There are a lot of resources over on this channel, but other ones as well, because I probably won't be teaching the fundamentals of Python next week. I do have a series for that called Python 101 in my playlists, which might be worth looking at. Or you may wish to just brush up on general Python. But we'll be there hopefully next week, and I look forward to seeing you there. If you're not already following and subscribing, feel free to do so, and I look forward to seeing you in future similar videos. Thanks. Take care. Bye.